Welcome to Powered Up, the podcast connecting industry-leading voices who are energising the future. Today's episode is one that so many senior leaders in our industry will relate to. I'm joined by a senior commercial operations and strategy leader with a strong track record in energy retail and a real passion for the energy transition. Like most seniors, they found themselves in a tough spot recently. They faced nearly a year out of work, navigating a senior job market that's tough to break into. We'll break down the lessons learned, the realities of a 9 to 12 month search, and the advice every senior leader needs to hear as they shape their next chapter. I'm super excited to be joined by Laura Hield-Ryder. Laura, welcome to Powered Up.
Hi, Amelia. Great to be with you.
Thank you. So Laura, you've had quite a fascinating journey. Let's start at the very beginning. You've been in energy retail space most of your career. So tell us about your career path.
Yeah, sure. So I started on a graduate scheme at a large energy supplier, npower. And that was really, wanting to be part of building a more sustainable world. And I knew energy was a huge part of that. And that's where that passion came from. After that, I moved to E.ON UK and I was there for 15 years across various roles in the domestic and B2B spaces, across commercial marketing, sales management. And it was a really great foundation in energy retail. I then moved into senior leadership roles, so latterly sales transformation and solar operations, but always with that commercial and customer focus running through as a thread. I took voluntary redundancy in 2021, and that was really a great opportunity for me to get closer to my passion for the energy transition. And I joined Arenco, which is a SaaS scale-up in the battery storage space. Firstly in a commercial role, and then as chief of staff for a couple of years, focusing on organisational development and strategic execution. So, quite a broad, rolling your sleeves up and getting stuck into lots of things there, which was great. But, it was a tough tech sector. And so I was made redundant in July 2024. And that was, unexpectedly being back on the jobs market.
It sounds like you've been through quite the journey within the industry, and energy retail has gone through a huge amount of change. So how's that shaped you as a leader? Has it defined you in different ways than you thought?
Yeah, I think it's given me a really broad appreciation of the challenges that customers face, especially thinking, about the last few years of the energy crisis, but also how the industry has still got a way to go to be truly customer focused. But going through that amount of change, I think, in the industry, it's made me be aware of being more flexible, open to learning, not taking things for granted, I think, but also the importance of building a strong network in what can feel like sometimes quite a small industry.
Absolutely. It's very integrated industry, and it's growing at the moment still. In terms of navigating the senior career market, you've spent around 9 to 12 months between roles looking for the right next step for you. What was that period like after going from full-time employment?
Yeah, it was really tough. I was unexpectedly on the jobs market, and I knew that it was a tough environment.
Mm-hmm.
In 2024, there was a lot of uncertainty with the elections in the UK, the US. Then, early part of 2025, the new US administration driving quite a lot of uncertainty for investors and growth across the, lots of markets, but affecting the energy industry as well. But, I saw that redundancy as an opportunity for a reset, enabling me to sort of reduce my stress, take some time with family, focus on my well-being, and then really think about what was going to be next for me. So after taking time with family over the summer, the steps that I took were to firstly proactively reach out to my network, build that out. And I knew that, that's where I was going to find my next opportunity ultimately. But I also engaged a career coach, and that was great to help me reflect on the last role, the redundancy, the emotions around that come inevitably, and helped me to get a much clearer plan and structure in place for my job search. I focused on using my skills for good as well, continuing my mentoring, which I've mentored women in renewables and clean energy for the last few years. So, keeping those mentoring relationships up, gave me a lot of value, as well as, being out feeling like I was giving value back to those people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's quite widely known in the sector that the senior job market can be really tough, and it's very competitive. Is there anything that you found most surprising about the market?
Yeah, I think I don't know whether this is surprising, but that there was a distinct lack of roles. I'd say there were a lot of junior roles that I found during my search, or they were just not in the area of my expertise. So, I found that the market is still very much based on who you know, so that network, in terms of also discovering opportunities as well as being put forward for those. And the recruitment process just feels so slow when you're out of work. I definitely experienced a couple of examples of poor candidate experience, even with well-established companies, and for senior hires. So that was quite disappointing, I guess, particularly when you're sort of in the moment. But I think also for me, because of my breadth of experience, it was I sometimes find it quite challenging to sort of articulate how that experience can sort of neatly fit into a particular opportunity where I've done so much across my career.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned just there in terms of the recruitment process, wasn't necessarily kind of held at the best standard. Are there any standout moments for that? Was it just delay in hiring managers getting back to you?
Yeah, I think it's organisations not necessarily thinking through the whole process up front, and I've been in an organisation like that myself. So it's about, I guess, the balance of keeping an open and fluid approach to recruitment whilst also being able to retain the best candidates. And I think from a candidate point of view, you want that a bit of predictability about what's expected, and how long that's going to be. And I think it's very important to keep in touch with candidates and just be very open about it. So I think the most disappointing was when I'd spent 4 months in a process and then the role went to somebody internally, which that person wasn't in the process out at the outset. So it's things like that are disappointing. But I get it from a business perspective too. So yeah.
You've been the hiring manager on many
I have.
occasions, and you've done the process and now seen it from both sides.
Yeah.
And I know that you mentioned that there was kind of a real lack in senior opportunities. Do you think that says anything in terms of the way that senior roles are being shaped or perhaps misshaped in the market right now?
I think the lack of opportunity at that point was probably, reflecting more the macroeconomic conditions. Also, probably my self-awareness about the type of business, say the size and strategic direction that I was looking for in an organisation and where I could add most value. So, I wasn't looking for larger organisations where there might have been more opportunities. But I think the focus for me was really about keeping in touch with a core group of recruiters, such as yourself and headhunters, to maintain that visibility, even if the roles weren't there, just making sure people knew I was still looking. And, it is frustrating because you are just looking for that break. But, I think if the economic situation really meant that companies are being even more specific about the types of skills and experience that they are looking for in a role. And, again, from a business perspective, I get that. I think sometimes being a bit more open to sort of broader experience is helpful to bring into a company as a new starter.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think, I know you said making sure the alignment was right from your side, but you've mentioned just there being open to broader candidates, I guess. Do you think that's probably one of the biggest barriers for senior leaders trying to stay in the sector at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's about looking for transferable skills and being able to articulate those transferable skills between roles, and also sort of interviewing for overall business value, including sort of the broader things like culture, organizational development, ideas, that kind of thing. But also being able to hit the ground running is important for a business where you've got restricted budgets and just need people in doing the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of kind of going through the candidate process over the last kind of 9 to 12 months and also experiencing being the hiring manager from a personal perspective, what risks do you think the industry might potentially face if experienced leaders can't find a way to kind of stay in the transition?
Yeah, I think there's a risk of industry knowledge moving away. That context, particularly in the energy industry, is often very important. And knowing that history, being a regulated industry as well in lots of parts of it, and understanding the roadmap. But I think it's also the passion for why we're doing this and that sustainable future. I think there's a lot of that passion with people in the energy industry, and enhancing that, I guess, is really critical.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It excites me of how much passion is in the industry, from people that have potentially just joined in the last kind of couple of months through to leaders that have been in the sector for numerous years. Is there any advice that you'd give to companies to do more of to attract and retain senior leaders? I know you said about broadening the scope.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important to me is understanding the link from the role to the company purpose. And I think, building stronger links to purpose is really important. I think that would do well to attract more people and retain. I think having a clear visibility for how the company is delivering net zero, and how senior leaders are contributing to that.
Hmm.
But also investing in people at all levels in an organization, because I think senior leaders joining an organization want to know that they have access to talented people when they're building their teams. And finally, I guess, one thing that's particularly important to me as well is, companies staying open to flexible and hybrid working. There's lots of talent outside of London, for example, where a lot of jobs are, so keeping that flexibility so that you're not missing out on talent in the wider country.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you there, and some really insightful thoughts. So thank you so much for sharing. But moving on to more exciting news, and despite the last 12 months of challenges, you've now stepped into a consultancy with BFY, which is a first for you to transition into a consultancy-based role. What inspired you to take that leap?
Well, as I said, there weren't loads of roles around, but this role, when I had a chat about it, was really exciting. And I think it was because it was a small business that's, supporting the energy transition, where I could, use my strengths in growing an organization, scaling their approach, and working with a really passionate team. So BFY is all of those things. So it's really exciting. It's a great team. They're rapidly growing with all of the challenges that brings, and that's what I like doing and solving. And we're helping large energy and utility clients solve really complex and big problems. So, it's exciting on lots of fronts. BFY specializes in utilities, I should say. So, it takes all of my background, and, I'm currently internally focused on the growth agenda at BFY, and therefore, it gives me a bit more of an indirect line of sight to that energy transition impact that I'm after. But I think there's definitely opportunity for that in the future.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like you've joined a super exciting time whilst going through mass expansion in the business. Have you found that joining a consultancy has challenged and stretched you slightly differently from your past roles? Has there been much difference there?
Um, I think it's more similar on paper than it might look on paper, actually, to
Hmm.
my previous role in the SaaS company. Being fast paced, it's relationship based sales, and the team is sort of a highly ambitious, high achieving team. So I think, the transition has been more about sort of establishing myself within the company and sort of being able to sort of define my strengths and how I could add value. There's also a really strong learning culture, and sort of feedback and personal development, which is great. But I think it's the pace and the ways of working has certainly taken some getting used to, just because of it being professional services versus product sales that I was
Yeah.
doing before.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastic, Laura. And I know that with many senior leaders in the market, imposter syndrome is something that people face quite regularly. Has there been much of that transitioning into a consultancy at all?
Yeah, for sure. And I think particularly in a consultancy, because there's a lot of BFY takes people from industry and and sort of brings them into the consultancy world. So I'm working with lots of people who have held very senior positions in very big companies. So yeah, sort of checking yourself in terms of not remembering who you're talking to. I don't mean like that. It's a very egalitarian culture at BFY, but there's a lot of experience and a lot of clever people there. So which can feel a bit intimidating sometimes. But equally, the culture of BFY is very welcoming and friendly. So you can quickly ease into that. So it's great.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that applies to most people in the sector with large projects ongoing and people working for these large enterprises and more junior people perhaps joining those enterprises. Imposter syndrome is a huge thing in the industry. But do you see consultancy as a bridge into something else, or as a long-term path in itself?
Yeah, I guess I'm not thinking about restricting myself either way at this stage. There's so much variety in the projects that we're working on. It's just exciting to see where it's going to go. And I think the business is growing with my experience of scaling a business previously.
That's brilliant. And looking ahead, I know that you've previously worked with a career coach and you're a mentor yourself. What's your personal career goals now? What's the outlook for the next kind of 5-10 years, etc.?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's about stabilizing and getting my confidence back. Being made redundant and spending that time out of work does inevitably kick your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's about re-establishing myself and, demonstrating to myself really that, I'm adding value, which I know I am, but it, can take a while for your head to catch up, I guess.
Absolutely.
And then the second thing, I mentioned BFY is very focused on personal growth. So I think that's something, I'm already learning a lot about the new business, how to add value and how to sort of shape that business going forward. So that personal growth agenda is really big for me. And then it's about shaping my role to actually have greater focus on the energy transition and impact that transition further.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, it sounds like an exciting few years ahead for you.
Yeah.
In terms of for other leaders in the energy transition, where do you see the biggest opportunities over the next few years?
So I think the first one is everywhere right now, but so digital AI and data-driven innovation. I'd say integrating AI into organizations is already happening, but at different paces, certainly. So, for me, I think it's about how we support the whole team to get the most out of AI and keep up the pace of development, and sort of how that integrates with projects and work more generally, because it's a great tool, but needs to be sort of implemented in a consistent way, I guess, to get that true innovation out of it. And I think the second thing for me is the just transition. So having that people focus, maintaining that people focus. So making sure that individuals don't get left behind, be that, vulnerable customers or workers in carbon intensive companies. Got to think about the journey for all of those groups.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite interesting that you touched on the AI side of things there, because I had a conversation with somebody the other day who mentioned that they've got these projects and they've got the infrastructure, but how do we make it better? How do we make it move faster? And it's integrating AI and looking at the data and becoming more software and tech focused, rather than just building an epic project and just letting it be. So it's really nice that you've touched on that side of things too. In terms of for other senior professionals who might be in the middle of a long job search, the market is quite tough at the moment, and there are unfortunately quite a few open to new opportunities. Is there any advice that you'd give specifically?
So use and develop your network. You have to do that. Spending time on this now, whilst in a job is best, I guess, to help you set up for the long term. Because what I found as well is that opportunity can come from the most unlikely of places. So be open to all conversations, and you never know where they might go.
Yeah.
Find a coach. That I'd definitely recommend that. Someone to help keep you accountable in your search, because job seeker days can be very long and lonely and frustrating. So having someone there to bounce stuff off and help you get a clear structure for the approach is essential. But and finally, looking after yourself. So giving yourself permission to spend time away from the search, not being glued to LinkedIn for 8 hours a day like I was at times, and being kind to yourself and doing things that make you happy, because I think that then comes through in in conversations that you're having, help you stay sane, and and eventually it will come through.
Fantastic. I know, speaking to other people in the market, and at one point yourself, it can get very negative when you're still looking for work.
Yeah.
So always be a mental advocate for yourself and just take some time away and look at you now. You've found a job opportunity, back to your most colourful self. I definitely agree on the taking time away. Is there a message you'd like hiring managers and boards to take away from your experience? I know you've said candidate experience from your side hasn't necessarily been the best process.
Yeah, I mean, having a good candidate experience is always what I'd advocate for. But I think also remembering that we've got a lot of talent in the sector that might not perfectly fit, what's on the job spec. So I'd say about considering the breadth of experience of that individual, and considering what they add to your the wider company. So seeing the value in people who've undergone change and challenge. So from my perspective, I bring resilience, a unique mix of corporate and startup experience, as well as the ability to guide organizations through uncertainty and change. So I think my career path shows that it's not just the success and the achievements that I've got under my belt, but also that fight and the perspective that comes from the various setbacks along the way that makes me a stronger and a more empathetic leader for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Laura. And importantly, you're driven by passion. Like most people in the sector, the passion is there, which is
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic to see. Final question from my side, and it's something that we ask all our guests on Powered Up podcast. If you could leave our listeners with one thought to help power up the future, what would it be?
I'd say find the people that energize you, keep in touch with them, work with them, and take action, because nothing will happen unless we do something about it, I guess. So
Absolutely.
people in action, that's the way forward.
I love that. Thank you so much, Laura. It's been absolutely incredible to hear about your journey and your story. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. We've obviously covered your career in energy retail, your passion for the transition and the challenges of navigating a tough job market, and your exciting step into consultancy with BFY. I know that you said that you mentor people in the sector. Is there anywhere that people who might be interested in some mentorship might be able to find you?
Yep. So I volunteer on the Regen Rewire program, which is for women in renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
They have intakes in the spring and the autumn, and it's free mentoring. So I definitely recommend them.
Fantastic. Wow. Thank you so much again, Laura. And for everybody watching, join us again on the next Powered Up podcast. Thanks so much, guys.